delivered, they were concerned about him and his heartbeat and Cindy and all those. I just one of those panic moments. Too much material. You're not interested in all of that. I just wanted you to know I got roots here, okay? This area means a lot to me, okay? And we stayed here for about 10 years, and it was such a very, very big blessing to us to be here. And Tom and Brenda, they went through a lot of the ride with me and my wife. When we left here and we moved to Paragould, it was because my mother-in-law was in bad health. She still is with us, but she struggles with Parkinson's, and she shakes quite a bit, etc. And we love her dearly, and we're thankful that Cindy can be close now to her mom and help take care of that. But getting there, we established a ministry called the Missionaries for America program, training young people to see America as a mission field. And without going into a great deal of detail about that, we are into our 21st year of that, and so thankful for the opportunities that God has presented to us. But every once in a while, I get to come back to this area. And when I see faces that are familiar and hear names that are familiar, it just you don't know how it warms my heart. But to be part of a scenario where 134 years is being celebrated is just like over the top. It really is over the top for me. And so John and I, as we communicated, texting back and forth and various things, I asked him, would it be okay if I go this direction? And you see it on the screen behind me. I want to talk to you during the course of our time together. I want to talk to you about the Ancient of Days, Ways, and Praise. We're going to see 3 separate passages. We'll start in the book of Daniel. Tomorrow night it'll be another passage, Jeremiah, and then we'll see even another passage, Isaiah, on Sunday morning. But I was thinking as I was putting these thoughts together that I'm hopeful that this is very much appropriate for a congregation of this age. A congregation that has been here so very, very long and has been obviously not just a source of great hope and example and all of those, but stability. The fact 134 years, I mean, wow, that's, Now the picture that's on the screen before you, I really struggled with this one, okay? I needed someone or a being, I guess that's some man that they took a picture of, I don't know, but I needed someone that represented an older gentleman, okay? And yet I wanted this older gentleman to be appropriate in the way that we visualize him in two directions. One, I wanted him to be old, but I also wanted him to be powerful. I wanted you to recognize in the picture that whoever this is that's representing God for us during these 3 lessons is someone that is presenting a posture of power, authority. He rules, he governs, and it's because of that that you and I have a similar hope to be powerful. Not have a spirit of timidity. We weren't given the spirit of timidity, right? We were given the spirit of power because of the Holy Spirit, which obviously is part of the Godhead. And so you and I have that. Acts chapter 2, verse 38, one of those passages that you hear us quote all the time, but Acts 2 and 38 clearly tells us that you receive that Spirit when you die to yourself, you're buried with Christ, and you rise to walk in newness of life. That experience is all tied up, Romans 6, 3 and 4, in baptism. And so the Holy Spirit comes to us, and the Holy Spirit indwells us. Now, I don't want to run this rabbit too far because it's not necessary for this series, but I would just say this in passing. There is a difference between receiving the Holy Spirit to come and indwell you and receiving an empowerment by the Spirit. Many throughout human history have been empowered by the Spirit of God, and those individuals, or even things, were not necessarily saved. It's very important that we see that because I think sometimes in the world around us today, we almost dilute the power of God by suggesting that just because an individual has been empowered by God, then that traps God into, well, that person had to be saved too. I'm thinking of Balaam's donkey. I don't know. He may be in heaven, but I don't think so. I don't know. But God clearly empowered a donkey to speak. The witch of Endor. I don't think she could have brought Samuel back, personally. I just don't think it would happen unless God allowed it to happen. Okay? I think of Nebuchadnezzar. Think about this guy. This is a total pagan. This is an individual who thinks of himself as a god. And yet, our God gave him visions and dreams, did he not? And then Daniel goes in and he interprets those, okay? Which is a great segue into our passage. In this passage, there's a phrase, the Ancient of Days. that brings to my heart a vision, a concept, if you will, of what the Holy Spirit can do in our lives. I need you to understand that when you talk about the Holy Spirit, you're not talking about a new concept. We're not talking about something that, was invented by maybe a charismatic congregation or whatever. When you talk about the Holy Spirit, you go all the way back to, I was going to say the beginning, but there is no beginning of God, so what do you go back to? I don't know, but He's been there the whole time. And that Holy Spirit is promised to you tonight. Lone Gap, Illinois. The Spirit of God is promised to you if you will simply open your heart and allow Him to reign therein. But there are two problems that stand between us and allowing that to happen. The first of which is some of us have never allowed the Holy Spirit to come in. As I've already illustrated to you, Acts 2:38, Romans 6:3-4, and I can go on with a plethora of other passages, tell us that we're going to get that Holy Spirit when we die to ourselves, buried with Christ, rise to walk in newness of life. That's Bible. You can argue with me if you want to, but it's what the book says. And so I'm just going to go with what the book says. So that's one hurdle. The other hurdle is that Paul says that even after receiving the Spirit of God, it is possible to quench that Spirit. I've just got here, so I don't want to get anybody's toes too sore to start off with, but I really believe for most of my lifetime, that's where the church has been. Quenching the Spirit of God. We come from a very proud, and rightly so, in a good way, background of the Restoration churches. The Restoration churches are different from the Reformation churches. I'm not saying that we don't complement one another. I'm not even saying that we don't owe a lot of credit to people like Martin Luther, who started that journey back towards the Bible. But it's important for us to recognize as a fellowship that we decided years ago, if you know your history, that we wanted to go further than just tweaking the Bible back to some position that some other man felt was comfortable. We wanted to restore. That means I want to go all the way back to what the first century folks said. Because the first century folks, it just makes good common sense. The first century folks are the ones who walked and talked with Jesus. They're the ones who got the original message, right? And then you add in the apostles as they come along. They are commanded by God, by Jesus, God in the flesh, in Matthew chapter 28, that they're to go and to teach what I've commanded you. And so they go about doing that. And so we've got our Peter, and we've got our John, and we've got our James, and we've got our Paul, who's going to write like 3/4 of our New Testament, are inspired by, I'm back to that point, the Holy Spirit of God. And He delivers to us then His message. That's why it is so very, very important for us to make sure that we test everything by what God says. Not church tradition. Not because Sonny said it and boy, he told a good story with it. Not because Miss Anita got over there and boy, she just, what do they say, that tickled the ivories or whatever, and boy, I just felt it, I just go, oh, We got to make sure that the book tells us, because we know that the book came from God, inspired by God. That Holy Spirit that we've been talking about has come to us, and in the indwelling that you and I receive at our baptism, we also receive the advantage of, 1 Corinthians, speaking a different language, reasoning on a higher plane. Because you see, the weapons we use are not weapons of the world. Because we're in battle with the spiritual realm more than we are the physical realm. Ephesians chapter 6, take on the full armor of God. So as you see this passage unfold before you this evening, and then tomorrow night, and then on Sunday morning, what I'm hoping you will see is the awesome, awesome power of the God that we're about to describe. But then take and understand that He wants to live in you. One of my most favorite passages in all the Bible, Romans chapter 8, verse 16. His Spirit testifies with my spirit that I'm a child of God. I'm making it personal in my quotation. His Spirit. Two different spirits, by the way. His in the translator, there is no capital letters in the Greek language, but the translators put a capital S on His Spirit in Romans 8:16. They give me a lowercase s, and that's appropriate because my spirit's different than His Spirit. But when His Spirit, the Holy Spirit of God, decides He wants to unify with Sonny, This is important. And then Sonny says, I want to unify with you as well. That grand spiritual marriage that comes about, that harmonization between the two, the power is without limit. But don't you find it, and Anita, as you were one song, I didn't know it, that I'm just humbled by what Jesus, what a beautiful name. Can you even begin to put your mind around, why in the world us? There are moments I get kind of full of myself, and I think, he's a pretty good guy, I look in the mirror and I say, well, maybe not that good, but every once in a while I get my hair going right, and that kind of thing. Yeah, he's not half bad, what I'm saying? But you know as well as I do, most of the time, we walk and we talk and we're at work and we're at play and wherever we have, and most of the time, I just don't feel worth it. Why in the world me? I'm beginning to love you. I just got to meet you, but why you? You ever think about that? Why in the world? I don't know. And if you come tonight to find out that answer, I ain't got it. Other than to say he made us. There's something awesomely beautiful about you that he wants to reclaim. The lost sheep. He would leave all those in safety and go wandering out there on the hillside and get you. There's something unique about you that he wants. He claims as his own. And so as you see this passage unfold before you, I hope that you'll just be overwhelmed by who God is, what God can do, if we will just overcome those two hurdles. First of all, do you have the Spirit of God living in you? Second of all, are you quenching that Spirit? Then let's remove those hurdles and look at what God has done, will do, and specifically who he is as far as our relationship with him is concerned. All right, here's your passage. Daniel chapter 7. We got, 3 verses here? But boy, are they something. Daniel chapter 7, verses 9 through 10. I think my eye might even be good enough. I can read right off that thing back here, Tom. As I looked, thrones were placed, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. There's our phrase, Ancient of Days. And his clothing was white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was fiery flames. We're going to get to that to the young people in the room. I love this passage. I don't have a clue why he has fire. His throne's on fire, but it gets better. Watch this. It says that, I lost my spot. His throne was fiery flames. Its wheels were burning fire. I don't know why his throne's got wheels either. But the wheels on the throne are on fire. Throne's on fire, wheels on fire, and there's more. Verse 10. A stream of fire issued and came out from before him. He's got a flame shooter that just comes right out from the front of his throne, evidently, okay? Obviously, some of this is being revealed to Daniel in, I don't really like that. We often say symbolic terms. The problem with symbolism is that it sometimes undermines the idea of reality. This is real, folks. He really saw that. Now, it may not completely translate into our little minds, and Daniel's doing his best to make you and I get it through the power of the Holy Spirit, but that happened, and probably it's 100 times bigger than this. It's just the best he could do to get it into terminology that humans could actually understand. So we got a throne on fire, it's got wheels, they're on fire, and we got a flame shooter coming right at the front. We're talking about a powerful, powerful setting here. But move on. It says that 1,000 thousands served him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. Now, before you get too literal with this, I think the reason the terminology is as it is because he's not really wanting you to do the math. And that's good, because I'll tell you what, I'm not good on math. That's why my wife's in charge of the budget. Math, but when I read these terms, even though I'm not good in math, I begin to pick up on something. That's a whole lot of people. We have got 1,000 thousands. I don't know, what is that? Anybody know? I don't know. What's 1,000 thousands? Is that a million? I don't know. See how you see how dumb I am. All right, but it's not only that. And 10,000 times 10,000. That's just a whole lot of folks. And so you've got this scene of God coming in, white hair, white robe, and it doesn't say it specifically, but I think this is implied. Notice that it says, I'm up at the beginning again. I looked, thrones were placed, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. It sounds to me like that what's happening in this opening scene for Daniel is that we're going to set the place up. Thrones are placed. And it's not until everything is right, everything is appropriate, that God enters. Now, I just don't have the words, but I need you to go here, because you're going to go here eventually. We're all going here. Now, God willing, you're going here because of the blood of Christ, and when you go there, it's just going to be overwhelmingly awesome. But if you don't go there with the blood of Christ, you're going to go there, and it's going to be overwhelmingly humiliating, a critical moment in your history in which you know you're doomed. But you're going there. You're going there. And when you go there, he will enter. When God enters, what happens? We've seen over the last several days, as we were watching the election thing, and I'm not going to be political, but I was watching the election thing, you know, Biden will pull up, and you see the entourage, and you see all the security. President Trump will pull up, and you see all the entourage, you see the security, all those kind of things. They come in, and boy, everybody just can't, they're either, you know, elated, and they're clapping or whatever, or they get silent because they want to hear the word, whatever, that kind of thing. That doesn't even begin to get it. Can you imagine what it will be like when the Creator, the one who allows you to take that breath you just drew, that one, he said you could do that. The one who speaks and you become. And he walks in. I've been studying through the book of Revelation, and oh, wow. It says the 24 elders, along with the 4 living creatures, they are just ongoing all the time, as if there were time there, but it's non-ending. They are forever falling on their face, casting their crowns before the throne, telling God of his holiness. If there is a background noise to heaven, and forgive me for calling it noise, Lord, I don't mean to underappreciate it, but if there is a background noise to heaven, you know what it is? Holy, 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 holy. It never ends. This God enters, and that silence happens because we are all in awe. But as you continue on, notice that it says 1,000 served him, 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court sat in judgment, and the books were opened. You want to know more about that? Go to the conclusion of the book of Revelation, and you begin to understand. One of those is the book of life, I'm sure. And it says, as you conclude the book of Revelation, it tells us that if your name isn't there, you ain't long to stay there. If there's one thing you want to do in this life, if there's one thing you want to get done in this life, it is make sure that your name is in the book of life. And the only way it gets there is through the blood of the Lamb. Now, you've seen the passage. Anita knows this. She times me well. She knows how. She claimed that I go an hour and a half. You actually said that. She has never heard me preach an hour and a half. I've never even preached an hour and a half. So I'm going to do, but she knows I'm a 3-point kind of guy. And so we're going to boom, 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 and we're done. Okay? And the last thing I do is going to be a story. It's just the way I've done it all my life. Okay? So here we go. You ready? Three, if you will, applications to what you're seeing in front of you. My first application is this. To be so awesome, yet so ignored. This is the grand, and I say grand in the negative sense, this is the grand tragedy of the human experience. That there are those, and I have debated them within the last 7 days. I have debated those who claim to be atheists, who claim that God is not anything, referring, I won't even use the terms, but referring to the Holy Spirit in derogative ways, suggesting that religion is just a crutch, that we have moved, we have grown, we have become educated. We now no longer need God. Within the last week and a half, I've debated individuals about that subject on social media. And although you and I shudder at that thought, That is becoming more and more a predominant concept in our nation. It's no wonder that we're struggling as a people. It's no wonder that our nation is so divided. When you dilute absolute truth, as far as we have diluted it, and for many of us, we have diluted it so far that it doesn't exist at all. When you go there, you deny God, and in denying God, you deny the very one who gave you that last heartbeat that you felt in your chest. The one who even allows you to rationalize the last sentence I formed. The one who lets you look forward and see the screen behind you. The one who gives you permission to tap your foot when Anita plays that song. That God who controls, and those are just the minor little things. That's why I went there. I didn't even talk about the big ones. If he controls things all the way down to that level, and we can't acknowledge him in the way that we live in our value system, etc., why would we ever think that he would one day want to have us spend eternity with him? And I'm going to turn the dial up a little bit further, though. All that I just said should convict you to the core of yourself. But let me go further. What if after all of that, God still loves you? And he says, I'll tell you what. I realize you're an open rebellion. I get it. That you're acting like a 3-year-old who didn't get their sweet after supper or the toy when they were walking through Walmart. I get it, God says. And I see you throwing your hissy fit, and I see you saying that I'm not even there, I don't even exist. I get that, but I love you, folks. I love you so much. I'll go down there, and I'll let you spit on me. I'll let you beat my back into ribbons of flesh. I'll hold back the power that I have and allow you to nail me to a cross. And by the way, once there, I will remain on the cross not because you make me, but because I choose to. And yet there is a world, a growing majority, who just can't see that equation. That kind of love, it just by necessity should prompt a response of awe. Richland Memorial Hospital. Once Bryson was born and everything settled down, Cindy was going to be fine. He was going to be fine. He had a cone head like you wouldn't believe. But he was in my arms. This is my first child, okay? And I remember as I held him in my arms, thinking, Cindy and I did that. Cindy and I did that. And then there was a very humbling moment. Because you see, I just almost lost Cindy. And I didn't know if I'd ever hold this little guy in my arms ever. God did that. There are two parts, primary parts of worship. And unless these two harmonize, you don't have true worship. There is the part of expression. We call it kissing toward God. It's a lousy illustration, but it's the best I got. You know how Italians, whenever they eat a good meatball or whatever, so good. Well, that's kind of the idea. So there is the expression part. That's the part we always emphasize, because that's the fun part, we think. That's the part where Anita's playing that song and your heart is racing and rushing and you tapping your foot or you're singing at the top of your lungs or swaying back and forth or whatever it may be. We love the expression, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is if the expression does not include the first part, the expression is very empty. You might as well be at a basketball game or a football game, which, by the way, I love going to, but it's not worship. Two parts to worship. There is the, God, you're so But this has to originate with the, when your jaw drops open and you have nothing except an exhale of awesomeness. I did that with Bryson. When I finally figured out, God did that. I remember my jaw dropping open and saying, and I worshiped. When you read this passage, the first thing that I would lay on your heart is this: to be so awesome, yet so ignored. We cannot allow that to continue. Number two, to be so old, but never age. Yeah, it's contradictory in a way. I get that. But remember, God's trying to put it into language that our little minds can get, okay? All right? That's why the person that's being represented there, representing God to you there, it's the best I can do with that. But to be so ancient, as to use the term that's in our text, to be so ancient and yet never age. How does that happen? I don't have a clue. But there's a lot to be associated with age. And to the young people in the audience, God bless you for being here. And to the parents who brought them, grandparents, God bless you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. But let me say something, and I'll try not to be harsh, but this is so very important because your generation is really missing out on something. I pray that you're not among them, but your generation is missing out on something. Grandpa doesn't know how to work an iPad.